Okay, so what I'm going to be showing here is how we take a 3D object from Onshape and turn it into a set of dimension multi-view drawings. So I'm going to come over here to our second hour demo. This is the object that we're going to be using for this demonstration right here. It's pretty straightforward. You can see what it looks like in the 3D view. And what I want to do is take this and turn it into a multi-view drawing with dimensions so that I can hand this off to somebody to recreate either in Onshape or in the real world out of a physical material, right? So just like we've gotten multi-view drawings, learned how to read them, and the measurements that are on there, we want to be able to produce those things now. Okay, so it's a pretty valuable skill in Onshape. So what I'm going to do is click on the plus sign that is down here in the bottom left corner, and I'm going to say Create Drawing. Now when I first open up that menu, I have some choices to make. For what we're doing today, we're just going to be using this ANSI A-inch template right here. And we're going to say no views for right now, and we'll just click OK. What that's going to do is that's going to open up a new drawing file, and it's going to sort of give us a chance to put our object in there. So by default, what it's going to ask us for is to place an object into the drawing file. So I'm going to open up my demo folder, I'm going to click on my part, and just like multi-view drawings that you've seen before, we know that the front view of this object goes in the bottom left corner. So I'll click to place that. And now what you notice is if I move my mouse up, once I get it up high enough, it's going to change into showing me the top view of this object. So I'm going to click to place that one there as well. And then if I click on this object and drag over to the right, it's going to give me the option to place the right view of that object. Finally, the last thing I need to do is click on the front view of that object and drag up to the top right corner, and I can click and place the isometric view of that object. Okay, so I have my four main views placed. I've got my front view of this object, I've got the top view, I've got the right view, and then up in the top right corner I've got my isometric view placed. If for some reason you did not place all of those views right away, whoops, I'm just going to delete that for a second. If for some reason you didn't place all of those views the first time, you can always click on the what we would call the base view of the object, this front view right here. And in Onshape, we can come up and click Projected View, and that's going to kind of load your cursor up with the next view that matches up. So if I drag over to the right, it'll let me place the right view, and if I click on it with that Projected View tool still active, I can come over here to the right corner and place the isometric view of that object. I'm going to click to get out of my projected view now, so I have all four of my main views in there. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to start putting some dimensions in here. And there are a few things that we need to know in terms of the rules of adding dimensions to a drawing, whether we're doing this on pencil and paper or whether we're doing this in Onshape. So the first thing we need to think about is where I'm going to be able to see the dimensions the best for this particular object. Before I do that, with this object there's one additional thing we need to do. So if you look at the front view, you can see that I have these circles which represent these two holes that go all the way through the object. I've got the center marks already on there. What I'd like to do though is also be able to show the hidden lines for those holes in the top view and in the right view. So if I right click on a view, I get some options here. And one of the options is Show Hide. I'm going to say Show Hidden Lines right here at the top. And I'm going to do that for the right view as well. I'm going to say Show Hidden Lines. So one thing to know about dimensioning is that we're never going to dimension to those hidden lines, but they're very helpful to show where a hidden feature on a part is. So if I wanted to show the overall width of the part, I have sort of two options, right? I could show the overall width on the top view, or I could show the overall width on the front view. Either one of those would be fine. I know that I'm going to have some additional stuff going on this front view though, because I have these circles. So I think I'm going to go ahead and place my dimension for the width on this top view. To do that, I'm going to use my dimension tool, which looks the same as it does in the modeling view when I'm sketching. And what I'm going to do is choose to dimension the width here. Now, I can do this in a few ways. Let me zoom in to show you. If this was an unbroken line, in other words, if it went all the way across as one single line, I could click on that and then just drag out and click, and it would set my dimension. Another thing that I can do, though, is I can set a dimension between 2 points. So I'm going to do that instead. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to drag my dimension tool down and click a third time to set that dimension. So if I zoom back, we can see that that dimension is sitting in between those front and top views. So that looks good. Now, a rule in dimensioning is that we don't ever dimension the hidden lines, but we do need to know the width of the object from here to here, or if you look at it on the front view, from here to here. I could place that on the front view, but I think I've got plenty of space here, so I'm going to place this on the top view as well. So this is an example of where I can click on just the line itself, drag down, and place my dimension. You notice that the way this dimension looks is a little different because it has those arrowheads pointing from the outside in, so it shows where that measurement is, but it also gives you space to actually put the measurement inside there. Okay, so Onshape will kind of do that automatically for you. Now I have a decision to make. I either need to measure from here to here and put a dimension in there, or I need to measure from here to here and allow this middle one to be a derived dimension where you just add up the parts, subtract it from the whole, and figure out the missing part. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to click and dimension this line right here. This is just a style thing, but because our engineering drawing's primary purpose is to communicate, I could place this dimension here, but what does that say to you? Does that look as neat and tidy as if I place it here? I don't personally think it does. I think style-wise I'd rather have those things lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and click and place that here. So if we look across here, do I have all of the width dimensions that I need for this object? More or less. The only thing I don't know is on the front view, what is the diameter of these holes and how far side to side and up and down are these things placed? So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Still using my dimension tool, I'm going to click on the circle and I'm going to click and drag a dimension over. Now, I have another decision to make here. And again, this is all about thinking about communicating clearly with my drawing. If I don't put a dimension on this circle, what is your assumption? Probably that they're the same size. So I can assume that somebody looking at this will assume that those are both the same size, or I could go in there and I could click and place another dimension. Either one of those is going to be just fine, unless there were 15 of these holes, in which case what I might want to do is add a dimension, and then a note that says all circles are the same size, or all holes are the same diameter, something like that, to clearly communicate to whoever's reading this, hey, this is what's going on with this measurement. Okay? So I have the diameter of this circle, but what I don't know is exactly where on the object it's placed. So the first thing I might want to do is think about where I can place that information. So I need to know how far over this circle is that represents the hole, and I need to know how far down or up this circle is that represents the hole. So I think what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to say I want to know from the bottom of the part to the center of this circle, I want to know how far up that thing is placed. So I'm going to grab a dimension from this edge to the center point. And I also want to know how far over this circle is. And so I'm going to click on this side line and this center point here, and I'm going to drag and set that dimension up. Now, a couple of things that I just did there that are worth explaining. Another convention when we're dimensioning a part is that, if possible, we try to put those measurements in between the views. So I'd rather have my measurements in this area here instead of below the part. So I could have taken this dimension and I could have dragged this down. If I get out of here, I could have taken this and I could have dragged this down underneath here, and that would have been okay, but it would have been breaking that convention a little bit. So I'd rather have that up here. So I think that looks pretty good there. I know how far over this center point is, and I know how far up this center point is. So I know where that circle is and how big it is. Now, same thing over here. I can assume that if I don't put the information on here, the person who's reading that has to assume that it's the same kind of hole placement over here, that those things are the same distance up from the bottom and the same distance over from the edge, or I could go in and specifically put that in there. For now, I'm going to allow the person who's reading this to assume that they're the same. Okay? So I have that information I think that I need. I know the overall width of the part plus its features. Now what I need to do is show the overall height and the overall depth, plus the height and depth of any features. So I'm going to do that next part. I'm going to go back to my dimension tool. I'll click on this top line and this bottom line, and I'll drag out to set the total height of my part. You notice that I'm leaving some space here because I have another height that I need to accommodate, and that is the height of where this part has a level change. This main part goes over and then it goes up. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension from this part, this line, this edge to this edge, and I'll go ahead and place that inside here. So do you notice how my dimensions are sort of stacking up from smallest to largest? Again, that's an aspect where it just helps your drawings communicate really clearly. Okay, so I know the height of both the overall part as well as that feature, and now what I need to do is set the depth. This part is consistent all the way across the depth from the front of the part to the back of the part, so there's only one depth measurements there, which is going to be this top line right here. This is a nice place to put it, or I could choose to put it over here. But what I don't want to do is put it in both places, because that's called over-dimensioning. Basically, we're communicating the same information twice, and that actually makes it less clear instead of less confusing. So I'm only going to put the dimension for the depth of the object in there once, and I'll choose to do it on the right-hand view in this case. So this is a fully dimensioned engineering drawing at this point, and that really includes all the things that we would need to have there.